Every table was full. The smell of fries and burgers filled the air. Parents sipped coffee while kids ran around the play area. Sylvester Stallone took a bite of his burger, enjoying the break. He was in Munich for a movie shoot, but right now he was just another customer at McDonald's. A couple of teenagers whispered excitedly, sneaking glances at him, but no one disturbed him. Across the room, a small boy, around 5 years old, stood frozen. He had messy blonde hair, wide blue eyes, and a McDonald's Happy Meal box clutched in his little hands. He wasn't playing. He wasn't eating. He was staring. Stallone noticed. The boy wasn't just looking, he was afraid. A minute passed, then another. The boy hesitated, glancing around nervously. He finally took a deep breath and walked towards Stallone. The actor leaned back, amused. "What's up, kid?" he asked with a smile. Lucas hesitated, glancing over his shoulder one last time. His hands were shaking. He took one step closer and whispered something into Stallone's ear. Stallone's smile disappeared. His whole face changed. He sat up straight, looking around. His eyes scanned every person in the restaurant, suddenly alert. The playful noise of the fast food joint seemed distant now. The boy was trembling. His tiny fingers clutched Stallone's sleeve. Stallone didn't hesitate. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and dialed 911. People nearby started noticing. A couple in the next booth exchanged confused glances. The teenage boys, who had been sneaking photos of Stallone earlier, put their phones down. Even the McDonald's employees behind the counter paused. The ringing tone felt like it lasted forever. Then, 911, what's your emergency? Stallone's voice was firm, urgent. This is Sylvester Stallone. I need the police at McDonald's. Now. Sir, can you tell us what's happening? The dispatcher asked. Stallone's grip tightened on the phone. His eyes darted across the restaurant. Something wasn't right. I don't have time to explain. Just get here fast, he said. Lucas clung to his sleeve, shaking harder now. His tiny fingers were ice cold. The McDonald's manager, a stocky man with a red polo shirt and a stressed expression, noticed the tension. He walked over. Is everything okay here? Before Stallone could answer, Lucas whimpered. His eyes widened in fear, staring at something, or someone, behind them. Stallone turned his head. A man in a gray hoodie sat near the entrance. He was hunched over a tray, pretending to sip a drink, but his eyes were locked onto Lucas. The moment he saw Stallone looking, he stiffened. His hands curled into fists on the table. Then, he moved. The man shot up from his seat and bolted for the exit. Stallone reacted instantly. He shot to his feet, knocking over his tray. The chase was on. The hooded man shoved past customers, sending a woman's milkshake flying. A tray crashed to the floor. A kid screamed. Stallone lunged forward. His Hollywood reflexes weren't just for the screen. He grabbed the guy's arm and slammed him against the counter. The man grunted, struggling, but Stallone held firm. Who the hell are you? Stallone growled. The restaurant had gone silent. Customers watched, wide-eyed. Even the fry cook peeked out from the kitchen. Lucas stood frozen, gripping his Happy Meal box. Tears welled in his eyes. Then, that's not him, Lucas cried out. Stallone's stomach dropped. Silence. Stallone looked at Lucas, then back at the man he was holding. The guy's face was twisted in confusion and anger. If this wasn't the guy, then who the hell was? The man in the hoodie struggled. Let me go! I didn't do anything! Stallone hesitated. The guy's reaction wasn't what he expected. If he was guilty, wouldn't he be trying harder to escape? Lucas tugged Stallone's sleeve. His voice was small but firm. It's not him, Lucas repeated, eyes darting toward the play area. Stallone's chest tightened. He had been focused on the wrong person. The police sirens wailed outside. The restaurant door burst open and two officers rushed in. One of them, a tall blonde cop, shouted, "What's going on here?" Stallone let go of the man, stepping back. I grabbed the wrong guy, he admitted, but we need to check the play area. Now. Lucas hid behind Stallone's leg, gripping his pants tightly. His whole body trembled. One officer approached the man in the hoodie, questioning him, but the other followed Stallone toward the play area. Stallone's eyes scanned the slides, the tunnels, the ball pit. Bright colors, giggling children, plastic floors. It all looked normal. Too normal. Then he saw him. A man sitting on a bench near the play area. No food, no drink, just sitting there, watching. He wasn't panicked like the guy in the hoodie. He wasn't running. He was calm, too calm. The man lifted his cup, took a slow sip, and stood up. Lucas's grip on Stallone tightened painfully. The man's gaze flicked to Lucas. He smirked. Stallone's blood turned to ice. Lucas's lips trembled. His voice came out in a whisper, barely audible. "Papa." Stallone's stomach twisted. The man, Lucas's father, was the real threat. The man took another slow sip of his drink, then placed the cup on a nearby table. His smirk didn't fade. Stallone stepped in front of Lucas, shielding him. His voice was calm, but his body was tense. "Stay right there." The man ignored him. He took a step forward. Lucas whimpered. His tiny fingers dug into Stallone's jacket. A police officer placed a cautious hand on his holster. "Sir, step back." Still, the man kept moving. Slow, deliberate. His eyes never left Lucas. Then finally he spoke. His voice was smooth, cold. "Come home, son." Lucas shook his head violently. His breathing turned ragged. Tears streamed down his face. "No, no, no, no," he sobbed, shaking so hard he almost fell over. The entire restaurant was silent. Customers were frozen, watching. No one spoke. No one moved. Stallone clenched his fists. This wasn't just fear. This was terror. The officer stepped between them. "Sir, I need you to explain what's happening." The man exhaled, like this was all an inconvenience. "I'm taking my son home. That's all you need to know." Lucas choked out, "He hurt Mama." Stallone's pulse pounded in his ears. The officer stiffened. Lucas sobbed harder. He grabbed onto Stallone like his life depended on it. "Papa said if I tell, he'll take me away forever." The man's jaw clenched. For the first time, his smirk vanished. Stallone's voice dropped, steady and deadly. "You just did, kid." The officer's radio crackled. A voice from dispatch came through. "Suspect identified, Dominic Wagner. Reported missing child involved. Proceed with caution." The officer's hand went straight to his weapon. "Sir, hands where I can see them." Wagner's nostrils flared. His eyes flicked to the door. Then, he ran. The moment Wagner turned to run, Stallone didn't think. He moved. He lunged forward, grabbing Wagner's arm just as he reached the exit. The man twisted, yanking free, knocking over a trash can as he bolted through the door. The officers sprang into action. One ran after him, yelling in German. The other grabbed his radio, calling for backup. Stallone turned to Lucas, who was shaking violently. Tears streaked his face. "It's okay, kid. He's not going to get far," Stallone reassured him. But Lucas wasn't looking at the door. He was staring at Stallone, eyes wide, chest heaving. And then, he said something that made Stallone's blood run cold. "Mama's still at home. He said if she tried to leave, he'd kill her." Everything stopped. The officer still inside froze. Stallone's breath caught in his throat. The McDonald's manager let out a low curse. Stallone immediately turned to the officer. "Call it in, now." The officer didn't hesitate. He grabbed his radio and barked into it. Outside, Wagner was sprinting across the street, dodging cars. The first officer was right behind him, closing in. Then, police cars skidded onto the scene, blocking his path. Wagner skidded to a stop, his head snapping in every direction, looking for a way out. There was none. He turned, his face contorted with rage, just as the officer tackled him to the ground. A struggle. Shouting. Cuffs snapping shut. Wagner was caught. Back inside, Lucas was still gasping for air. His little body was trembling violently. Stallone knelt down, gripping his shoulders. "Where's your mama, Lucas?" "Where is she?" Lucas's lips quivered. "Home." He locked the door. He took her phone. The officer on the radio barked out the address. More sirens roared in the distance. Stallone squeezed Lucas's hand. "They're gonna get her. You did good, kid." Cliffhanger. Will the police get to Lucas's mother in time? Police cars tore through the streets of Munich, sirens wailing. Every second counted. Lucas clung to Stallone's arm, barely breathing. His mother was still in that house. Inside the police car, the radio crackled. "Units arriving on scene. No movement inside." Lucas let out a choked sob. Mama, please. Stallone's jaw tightened. He had spent decades playing heroes on screen. This wasn't a movie. The officers reached a small, rundown apartment complex. The door to Lucas's home was locked, but not for long. Bang! The police kicked it open. Inside, silence. Then, a sound. A faint, muffled whimper. A closet. The door was barricaded with a chair. One officer shoved it aside, yanking the door open. Lucas's mother stumbled out, eyes swollen from crying, wrists bruised from rope. She saw the officers. Then she saw Lucas. Lucas, she sobbed. Lucas let go of Stallone and ran straight into her arms. She cradled him, crying into his hair, whispering over and over, my baby, my baby. Stallone let out a slow breath, watching them. For the first time since Lucas had whispered to him, he let his guard down. Wagner was going to prison. Lucas and his mother were safe. The officer turned to Stallone. You saved them. Stallone shook his head. Nah, he did. He looked down at Lucas, still buried in his mother's arms. The kid had been terrified, trembling, trapped. But he had spoken up, and that had changed everything.